everyone. I'm fat. Your turn.
What?
I'm fat. I'm clearly fat. When they look at me on the screen, they're going to be like, a guy has more chins than a Chinese phone book.
Well, I must be skinny then.
Yeah, right. How much do you weigh? Don't answer that. We're on live TV. All right. So, he's not fat, by the way. This is my 4-year-old that's poking his head in here. Been gone for a while. Apparently, it's because I needed to eat myself into a coma. I'm working on it. Starting.
You're working on more of a coma? What?
Right, seriously. To the victor go the spoils, and apparently I ate all the spoils. All right, enough fat jokes for right now. A few things that this show is going to cover, and guys, it is great to be back. I know on behalf of Eric and myself, we feel like this has been way long overdue, and you'll see it. Okay, no, sir. You may see some interruptions with my 4-year-old periodically throughout, and that's fine. Any background noise is because I'm not filming in the garage, because here in Arizona, it has officially reached 97,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Mercury! Residents of the planet Mercury, I almost said the country. Residents of the planet Mercury are going, we ain't going to Arizona, it's too friggin' hot. We'd rather take a vacation somewhere cooler. We'll just go up north. I don't even know what north would be on the planet sector. I'm just rambling at this point because I clearly am glad to be back. But the garage is way, way too hot. And I don't want to just, maybe that'd be good. I could use it as a sauna and melt my fat away. But anyway, Eric, that's, go. Take it away. Save the show. Please, the segment's already lost.
No kidding. So why don't we go over a little bit of the draft? I know it's been since probably 3-4 months since the draft, but it's always a good recap. We're just going to recap a couple of teams. I mean, we'll save the Rams for last because they didn't pick till, the third round?
Yep.
And so we normally would do a draft recap of, first couple of rounds, do the Rams picks, do the Bears picks and whatnot, but we're just going to kind of go with the Bears picks, and their first round didn't surprise me as the first round unfolded. I'm really happy to have this guy. He's just got to get signed and get in camp, but the Bears selected linebacker Roquan Smith with their first pick. Then a guy that we had going in the first round to Detroit, or in the first round altogether. I had him going in the first round to Detroit, but the Bears selected center out of Iowa, James Daniels, who's actually going to play guard for the Bears. And then they got back into the second round and selected wide receiver Anthony Miller out of Memphis. And I'm going to tell you, this guy may be the whole steal of the draft. He's electric. He is coming off a little bit of an injury from his college days, but the Bears are loaded up on weapons on the offensive side. They signed Allen Robinson in free agency, Trey Burton in free agency, and picked up Miller. And this guy could be special. If you add in Kevin White, if he doesn't get injured, the Bears are going to have a lot of footballs to throw around the field. But I like that they got the versatility with Daniels, and Roquan Smith is probably going to be an animal on that defensive side of the ball. That's going to really up the game of his ex-teammate at Georgia, Leonard Floyd, if he can stay healthy. But the Bears' defense is starting to look legit.
Well,
as far as a grade that I would give them, especially out of their first 3 picks, I would give them an A-.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. A couple things on this. First of all, guys, I really recommend, if you are going to get a magazine, get this is Apple one. Never mind, I got the wrong magazine. I recommend the Sporting News magazine. It's a real thorough, and I'm going to show that here in a minute. But to me, Eric, the red zone weapon that fell to you in the 7th round, Javon Wims from Georgia, the Bulldogs didn't really utilize him as well as I think he can. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Keith Jackson coming out of the draft in the late 80s for the Eagles. They drafted him out of Oklahoma. They were an option running team, triple option team. he was predominantly a blocker. The Eagles picked him up, but he turned out to be one of the best receiving tight ends of the 90s, and one of the better players to come out of Oklahoma, in my opinion, maybe ever. And I just think he's got tread on the tires because I don't think he's been used as properly. But when you're 6'3", 215 in this league and you can jump like he can, I think that could be an interesting weapon. So I think for me, no pun intended, but Kylie Fitz from Utah, being a Pac-12 fan, watching a lot of Pac-12 games, this guy reminds me of a Brian Noble from Green Bay. He's not the fastest guy in the field, but he's going to get 100 to 115 tackles a year. If he gets you, he's got you. You're not breaking his tackle. Superior athletes may be able to juke him out a little bit. He's going to be a little bit weaker in coverage. I wouldn't necessarily call him a pass rushing specialist, but he's going to set the edge and he's going to make the tackle. And when you look at that coupled with the guys that you talked about in the front half of the draft, I think A- is an absolutely appropriate grade for the Bears. Athlon has him as a B+. I'm going to get my other magazine here in a minute while I let you talk about the next team. But what I think impressed me about the Bears the most is they understand that Trubisky needs weapons, but they also understand that they need weapons that can work no matter who's behind the center. It's the biggest problem that I have with the Packers, right? I mean, without Aaron Rodgers, those receivers can't do anything. You've got receivers that if Trubisky goes down, they're still valuable targets for the quarterback to hit. They don't need to have that relationship because of their skill set. As far as I'm concerned, Eric, I'm sorry, but I've given up on White. Even if he stays healthy, it's a Mike Sherrard situation. He's been out of the league for so long. He's missed so many games. I don't know that damage can be repaired. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And, of course, the Bears did not pick up the fifth-year option on his deal. Rightfully so as well. I mean, you're not going to pick up an option on a guy who has barely seen the field. Now, the Bears did not pick up the option on Kyle Fuller. And, they thought coming in he had a bad year in 2016. And then they're like, okay, we're not going to do the option. So he played 2017, had a heck of a year, and they couldn't find. They did not franchise tag him. And then what happened was he got an offer sheet, and then the Bears matched it. So they got an offer sheet from the Packers. So they're like, we're going to make the Bears spend money, and the Bears are like, within 2 minutes, are like, well, we're matching this offer.
Yeah. So
unless Kevin White goes berserk and pulls an Allen Robinson from 2 years ago where he gets 1,800 yards and catches 15 touchdown passes, don't expect to see Kevin White in a Bears uniform next year is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, well, the other team that I wanted to cover, because I do widely think they had a very good draft. I didn't necessarily agree with who they drafted at number 1. But
of course you didn't.
Well, no, because I wanted Josh Allen. Everyone knows that. And go ahead and touch on the Browns first. I'm going to step upstairs and see if I can't find what I'm looking for. But Eric, go ahead and take it away on the Cleveland Browns. Go.
Well, with Cleveland, when they selected the first pick, it started becoming inevitable who they were picking roughly about 2 days before the draft. They were talking about Baker Mayfield. They were talking about Josh Rosen. They were talking about Josh Allen. They were talking about Sam Darnold. And so it just became increasingly clear. And I do have a Twitter account, so I have been reading what the Browns were, who the Browns were talking to, what they were looking at. There's always so much information that they put out on, before the draft. So nobody signed a contract beforehand. However, more increasing chatter came about that the Browns were leaning more heavily toward Baker Mayfield. And I'm like, okay, I can see it. I don't know if that's the right move. And then all of a sudden, I can't remember exactly who, but one of the Josh's tweets from years ago came out, and I think that's what dissuaded the Browns from taking one of the Joshes. I want to say Josh Rosen, not Josh Allen. Could have been Allen. Not too sure, but then they selected Baker Mayfield, and I wasn't too surprised. It was one of those where, you know what, you need a quarterback with a semi-type of attitude in a good way, not another Johnny Manziel, but a quarterback with a chip on his shoulder like Mayfield seems to have, and he might fit right in with the Browns. And you know what? Good for the kid for getting selected number one, and you know, hopefully he does well there. The Browns have been looking for a winner for quite some time, so to me, you know, he's a perfect fit. They don't want him to play the first year. That's why they have Tyrod Taylor, but I would say expect Baker Mayfield to be in the starting lineup by week 8.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be that early. I'm going to say a couple things here. First of all, to recap with the Bears. Guys, this is the magazine that I was telling you about. I'm going to show it. It's Street Smith's football magazine. I'm not recommending it because they picked the Rams to win the Super Bowl. Shut up, Eric. I'm not. I'm actually picking it because it's really comprehensive. They talk about impact newcomers, the new arrival. There's a draft report, a bottom line. They cover each position. They give you the stats. I don't like the fact they don't give the defensive stats too much on here, except for maybe sacks. But they give inside the headset where they talk about coach, view from the other sideline. And it's all no nonsense. It's like each team gets like 4 pages of information. And, you know, they kind of do it old school where they talk about what a team can look forward to if you're a fan of one of these teams that maybe isn't picked to do some things. It's a really good magazine. And in fact, Eric, they gave the Bears an A-. So between Lindy's Pro Football Magazine, Athlon's Pro Football Magazine, Sporting News Football Magazine, this is the only one that gave the Bears the same grade we did of an A-. So it's another reason why I like the book. It's because they think a little bit clearly. I actually don't agree with them on the Browns grade or the Rams grade. But for me, I still think – I'll tell you when I knew it was going to be pretty obvious that they were going to draft Baker Mayfield, okay? And I'm not trying to brag, but when they turned in the card and he said Baker Mayfield, that's when I realized they were probably going to take Baker Mayfield.
Wow, that's some really good insight.
Well, you know, I'm telling you, it was a gut feeling. I don't know what it was. Look.
Guys, let me rephrase that for you. That was a big gut feeling.
Oh, back to the fat jokes, Eric. I appreciate that. You could say it was a Santa Claus-sized gut feeling. Look, the reality of the situation was this. I think the Browns missed getting Josh Allen. To me, he is the best quarterback to come out of – he was the best quarterback in this draft. I am as sure of Josh Allen as you were of Deshaun Watson. Fair?
But I was pretty darn sure of Deshaun Watson.
You were. And I'm pretty darn sure. In fact, so much so that I'm actually going to be watching a lot of Buffalo games this year. But I'll tell you why the Browns made the decision on Baker Mayfield. When they decided to go get Tyrod Taylor and build this thing slowly, I actually will be surprised if Baker Mayfield plays this year. Because of all the quarterbacks, I think Baker Mayfield has the most potential to become something special. I think Josh Allen is already special. I think Josh Rosen is not special. I think what you saw in college is what you got in the pros. And you're supposed to want to develop and get better. Rosen's not going to get better. As far as the kid from USC, you know, I think there's some growth there for him, but I don't think it's that high, if you will. As far as Captain Wonderlick, and I'm joking when I say that, in Jackson, the kid from Louisville, has a limited skill set. He can run really fast. Okay, so when he gets his knee blown out like Deshaun Watson, what else can he do? Well, he could throw medium and short range passes. So unless they plan on utilizing a West Coast offense, I don't see him doing much of anything in Baltimore. So getting back to the Browns, Baker Mayfield has a lot of potential. He may start this year, Eric. I think they drafted him with an eye on 2019, not 2018. But when you throw in a Denzel Ward from Ohio State, when you throw in the kid from Nevada, I didn't even hear about him, Austin Corbett. But I don't watch a lot of, I didn't watch a lot of Nevada games, to be fair. But Nick Chubb, to me, he'll be the starting running back by the 5th week of the season. And Carlos Hyde will either move to fullback or he'll be a backup. The other one on there that I really want to talk about that I was really excited about was, where is he? There he is, the kid from Florida, Antonio Callaway, the wide receiver. He's only 5'10", but the kid's got wheels and he's got sticky fingers, which is all things you like at wide receiver. And you put him at the slot, he could be what Tavon Austin was thought to be in L.A. He can be a gadget guy. He's going to be a return man, more than likely. He's going to be one of those 4th or 5th wide receiver options when guys get injured, or they're going to use him in, situations where they can gadget play him. But it's just another weapon on a team that didn't have many weapons last year. To me, I don't know what grade you're going to give the Browns. The Baker Mayfield project for me is, of all the project quarterbacks in this draft, he's the surest one that I think you can get good returns on. I give the Browns a B because of the Nick Chubb pickup, because they addressed the O-line, or the D-line, I should say, with Chad Thomas from Miami. I like some of the receivers they got on the back end that will allow for depth. Some of those guys won't make the team, I'm sure of it, but I just maybe B, C plus. I'll go with a C, C plus.
For me, they could have really solidified their draft. It really shouldn't have mattered which quarterback they took at number 1, but I thought they got it wrong at 4. They should have taken Quentin Nelson from Notre Dame to shore up the missing Joe Thomas presence that won't be there. And if I'm Joe Thomas, I'm probably wanting to come back right now, but I can't really go back on my word. Because that team could be really exciting this year. I mean, even if they win 4 or 5 games, it's still a big improvement.
Well, and that's the thing. Do you really think? Yeah. Do you really think that for Joe Thomas, him going back on his word after an 0-16 season and maybe wanting to retire with a few wins, I don't think anyone would blame him.
So. Plus, he went out because of injury. Like It wasn't. He didn't make his own call saying, "Okay, you know what? This is my last season." My last snap was me getting my bicep torn.
Yeah.
So. To me, I don't know if I could go out that way.
Yeah.
But I'm not in that position. As far as the Browns go, I would give them a B as well.
Yeah, I would say probably a C plus to a C, just because you're right with the Quentin Nelson thing, and that's funny because this magazine, the Street Smiths, they gave him a C, a solid C. I like Denzel Ward. I just don't necessarily think the Browns needed that position filled. I'll put it this way. If Joe Thomas does come out of retirement and play for the Browns, then it's a B. If Joe Thomas stays retired and this is their O-line, they have a C. I'll go with that. Now, so you guys know, we're going to wrap this up, the draft part of it with the Rams, but we will do in another show here soon. My plan is to go over all the teams quickly, just like we've been doing. Give them a grade and move on. Now, for the Rams, they had a difficult situation. A lot of people said that their draft was, they basically drafted Brandon Cooks in the first round. And then when they signed him to a 5-year extension, it kind of feels like they did. But to me, there were a couple players that I got so excited that the Rams drafted. And I personally think that Joseph Noteboom, considering what was there, was one of the best pickups the Rams could have made in the 3rd round. He's a guy that's going to learn. He's a balanced offensive lineman. Nowadays in football, the days of having, pass blocking tackles, run blocking guards, and a balanced center are out the window. You need balance across the line because there's so many more passing routes and play action passing plays and so many nuances and variations. You really want to be balanced. And both the guys they got in the third and fourth round, in Joseph Noteboom from TCU and Brian Allen from Michigan State, are balanced linemen. They are as good of maulers as they are pass protectors. And both of those positions are going to be backing up Whitworth from a tackle and Sullivan at center. I thought to address that first and get that out of the way was really good. But to me, Jamil Demby, the guard from Maine. Eric, you know I watch a lot of Maine football when I can. I'm always, if I'm not able to get on TV, I'll go online and watch a game in the morning. Usually Sunday morning at like 5 o'clock in the morning, I'll put it on and just kind of, watch like a quarter or a half of it or whatever, and then get back to it later in the week when I'm at work, because you can find their games online. This guy that they got, this guard, he pulls, he traps. His pass blocking's a little weak, which I think is why he slipped. But you put him in the run game and, you coach him up in the pass protection thing. And I think the Rams might have gotten 3 starting offensive linemen in the future in this one single draft, and 3 Pro Bowl type offensive linemen to boot. So I thought that was a huge pick. There was another one that I got really excited about. Where was it? Oh, Micah Kaiser, the linebacker from Virginia, leading tackler in the ACC. Again, a lot like we talked about with the Bears, that guy that makes all the tackles that they picked up. He's the same way. And he's probably going to start. And you're talking about a 5th rounder, not only starting on a Super Bowl caliber team, but probably making a positive impact. So I look at that and I give the Rams a solid B. Maybe even a B+, depending on how Demby comes along and when he gets in the lineup. And that's not just me being a homer. I just think it was a really smart draft on the Rams' part.
Yeah, the problem with me is I stopped really following the draft after the second round, and I didn't really follow too much the third through the seventh. Obviously, I'll defer to you as far as who the Rams picked up. And I know they traded, at least the first time before their pick came up, and I think they traded the second time. I wasn't sure. But at that time, it's what fits, best player available type of thing. So I'll definitely default to your grade for what the Rams did. And if they're able to get better with late round picks, then that's what you got to do.
Well, I mean, you think about it. That's how the 49ers built their dynasty for 20 years. They're drafting 86. Everybody knows the Don Griffin and the McKyer picks, but McKyer was a 5th round pick. Bill Romanowski was a 4th round pick out of Boston College. Sapolu was a 2nd round pick. So you can really make your team in the late rounds, and I think people forget that. A lot of people think that the 1970? It's either 70 or 71 draft that the Steelers had and the 1986 draft that the 49ers had are the 2 greatest drafts in the history of pro football because of the amount of Hall of Famers they had on it. It might have been 74. Might have been the 74 draft going into the 74 season, because that's when they got Swan and Stallworth, but they also got Webster. They also got a handful of guys. So I think that you can really build your team from there. So we'll see. All right. Eric, figure we'll do 2 rants each. I'm sure you have a few rants that you want to go on. I'll let you go first so I can let mine simmer, and then I'll unleash mine. So go ahead.
Yeah, we might have similar rants. I'm not sure. It'd be nice if the NFL and the Players Association can get this anthem thingamajig. I don't even want to call it policy, because it's really not policy, but if they could just get this resolved, I think the best thing that they can do right now between the NFL and the Players Association is everybody stays in the locker room until the anthem is done.
I don't agree with
really,
that.
To me, this is the way that it's going. nobody can see eye to eye, and I don't want to get politics involved, but I'm going to throw this in there and say, when you have the president start getting on Twitter and saying, "Oh, guys should be banned" or something like that, you know what? Just say we're going to have this universal. Nobody's going to be out on the field for the national anthem. This way, we're not going to have people who are standing, kneeling, sitting, back turned towards it, or whatever. Just make it universal throughout all of football. Everybody stays in the locker room, and this whole headache goes away. To me, that's what it's gotten to. You don't see it in any other sports. You did see it in baseball one time last year. One time, that was it. But you don't see it in any other sports. A while ago, you did see it in the NBA, but that actually resolved itself, and it had nothing to do with what was going on now. That's the thing. This happened, I want to say, 10 to 12 years ago. The NFL only sees it, the NFL is the only one that has the problem. So keep everybody in the locker room, this whole situation be resolved. Second one.
Well, hold on. We have a similar one. I know I promised the fans that I wouldn't talk politics, and I haven't. But this has reached critical mass. They do what you said they need to do, Eric, and I will never watch another NFL football game for the rest of my life. Nor will my kids watch it, nor will I even go to a game if a ticket is for free. Because there comes a point in time when one must understand that what they tried to accomplish offended more people than brought people together. And yes, I'm sorry to say, but sometimes you're wrong. You're wrong. I've been wrong before. I know I've been wrong before. Been wrong lots of times. Everyone's wrong every once in a while. And to not accept the fact that your approach to this situation was wrong is ignorant. It's ignorant. It's willful stupidity. In basketball, where it's just like football, although I would argue more so, it's 88% African Americans play in the sport. It's less than 20% Caucasian. So at that point, they resolved it. They still believe that in the cause that they originally knelt for. They just found another way to address it. Baseball doesn't have the issue. I went to a game, and half the Diamondbacks roster is from another country. Yet everyone stood for the national anthem, celebrated it for what it was, and played ball. Hockey, you have so few Americans in that sport, it's not even funny, and yet they show more respect for the flag than the very billionaires that are benefiting from it. I understand what they were fighting for, but there is a point in time when you must own up to the fact that you were wrong. Your approach was wrong. Not your position, not your political stance, but you were wrong on how you addressed it. And I'm dead serious about this. If this continues into this year, this will be the last year I watch football. There's a new league coming in 2 years or in a year. I'll give both of those new leagues a shot. I've got arena football. I got hockey. I don't need this. As somebody who's had relatives fight and die for this country, an uncle that's a police officer, retired, as a teacher myself, as somebody who understands the movement but doesn't agree with the methods in which they're protesting, it's got to end. And if the NFL takes that approach, I'm done. And so are probably a majority of their ticket sales. Right now, the NFL is making a living, and it's barely. They're making a living off of ticket sales, not because people are going to the games, but because it's $9,000 for a family of 4. So once the families start pulling back, and they are, once the wealthy who don't agree with this movement realize that they're not being heard and that their feelings on the matter Because believe me, there's a lot of people out there that agree with what the NFL players are fighting for. They just don't agree with the methods in which they're fighting for it. And it's total ignorance and stubbornness to sit there and go, well, we're going to continue to do this. You can continue to do that. Okay, I've said this for a long time. The difference between a progressive liberal and a conservative is simple. If you offend or you upset a progressive liberal, they will do everything they can to make sure you lose your job, you get fired, and you never make a living again and they ruin your life. A conservative will just stop buying your product. That's it. They boycott it. I'm done. A liberal, a Democrat, also takes the boycott approach. And I think it's time that the NFL gets this figured out, because my patience for this is at zero. I'm talking about it on my show, and I said I wouldn't. That's how much I'm done with this. And I'm sure there's people out there that are too. And again, I cannot reiterate this enough, and I know somebody's going to comment and be like, oh, you're just a racist, or you just don't agree with the movement, or you're pro-cop, you're pro-Trump. They're going to give me a whole bunch of things that I'm not. They may turn around and go, oh, you're obviously, pro-military. Yeah, I am. Well, that's not what this is about. I didn't say that's what this was about. But that is unfortunately the route that this protest is taken to. All I'm saying is I support what they're fighting for. But I do not and will not support the method in which they are fighting for it. You make $100 million a year. $60 million. You're telling me that you can't start a program in a community that can do a better job and bring more awareness in the area that it would directly affect than kneeling down before an anthem before a game? Which, by the way, most people now just don't watch the game until kickoff. They don't put the game on for the pregame BS. So I think money can be better spent by these athletes. Their time can be better utilized, and they can get their message across in a clearer and more concise manner than they are now. But this whole thing has got to go away. Moving on. So, what's your second rant? Obviously, that was one of mine.
The second part of my rant is, first, Kirk Cousins did it right. He left Washington, signed with Minnesota, fully guaranteed contract. Football is starting to go this way. You're going to see the movement starting next offseason, to where more guys are asking for a fully guaranteed contract. If it doesn't happen then, you're going to be in for a bloodbath of a CBA bargaining in 3 years.
I think you are anyway.
When the CBA expires.
I think you are anyway.
And I think you might have a very, very long work stoppage.
I do too.
So I think Kirk Cousins set a trend that's going to just pick up momentum next offseason, as the players don't get what they want. Because if you get injured, you're not getting paid your full amount. Baseball is all guaranteed. Basketball is guaranteed. It's just one of those sports where football is not fully guaranteed until Kirk Cousins came along. So it's not really a rant. It's just be careful what happens in 3 years. Because,
I don't.
The CBA expires.
I don't normally take the position, having a master's degree in business. I don't normally take the position of the employee over the employer. But this is a completely different situation. If I'm at work and something happens that's not my fault, I get paid for it, fully paid for it, for X amount of time. I think the fact that these NFL athletes, considering the concussion problem that they have, considering the lack of enforcement of the steroid policy that they clearly have in this sport, these athletes are in a bad situation. And the fact that they don't have a guaranteed contract, I think, is criminal. And I'm actually siding with the athletes on this position. I don't understand how you can look somebody in the face and say, we're going to pay you this amount of money, but if you get injured because you're going 120% like I asked you to do so we can win and make lots and lots of money, I'm not going to then pay you your full amount because you got hurt on the field, and I'm not paying you to be injured. I'm paying you to play. Well, the guy got injured because he was playing for you and giving it everything he had. So I just think it's a real sleazeball move by the owners. And I'm not normally someone that takes that approach or talks like that, but this is an absolute scumbag move by the owners. And I think that the athletes need to get a fully paid contract, and kudos to Kirk Cousins for getting it started, and hopefully that ball gets rolling. A work stoppage in 3 years may just be the death of the NFL. If those other two leagues, because by then the XFL will be relaunched, this new league will be relaunched. Take it away. They're going to have two different leagues going on. Granted, not at the same time as the NFL. I believe they're both scheduled to take place afterwards. But if I'm one of those leagues, I'm like, there's no NFL. They're done for the year. I'll run my games when they were supposed to be played and give people their fix. You're going up against college football, which is going to be a challenge, but it's a risk. And maybe these things are going to fall flat on their face and it's irrelevant. But I think the idea that the NFL no longer has competition and anything new that comes into the fold is not really a threat to the NFL. I think when you consider how upset the fan base is, when you consider how disenfranchised so many cities are because they're so fed up with their teams not making the playoffs for 5, 10, 15, 20-year droughts, and then you couple the fact that every time something goes wrong with the stadium, the solution isn't to fix it, but to build a brand new stadium on taxpayer dollars. I just think that there's fatigue with the NFL, with fans. Not to mention how many different states are going the way of California and almost banning high school football altogether. So now these kids are getting into basketball. These kids are getting into hockey. These kids are getting into baseball. There's less and less interest in football. Both my boys, 13 and 5. One loves hockey. The other one loves baseball. They could care less about football. It's not interesting to them. And I think it's because kickoff commercial, extra point commercial, touchdown commercial, timeout commercial. Oh, we're not really in a commercial, but we're going to minimize the screen here and give you a 30-second commercial here and then go back to the game. And then, oh, by the way, commercial. And commercial. And, oh, by the way, this drive is brought to you by Arm & Hammer, men's deodorant. Commercial. Oh, this field goal attempt is brought to you by, you can't get your wee-wee up anymore, so take this pill. Like, it's getting to the point of stupid. I mean, really, post-game shows that are sponsored by X product, how many people even watch the post-games anymore? Do you? I know I don't.
No, I don't.
So I just think that it would be a tremendously bad move. All right, my second rant. That wasn't it. My second rant is just on the media itself making these decisions on these players and then pretending like the fan base has amnesia. People saying, Jared Goff had a really good year. I'm going to use the Rams as an example. Jared Goff had a really good, how many people said before the season started that Todd Gurley, was washed up, that he wasn't as good of a back because he had such a bad sophomore year. It's like these idiots. And what kills me about these announcers, Eric, is almost all of them are former NFL players. And you're telling me that a bad year or a bad system doesn't play a part into this? I mean, it blows my mind that you think Jared Goff is supposed to throw for 3,000 yards and 97 touchdowns in 7 games with an offensive line that couldn't protect. I'm going to keep it clean, so I'll find a different analogy. An offensive line that couldn't stop a wet paper bag from crossing the line of scrimmage and getting to the quarterback. And these guys are woefully pathetic 2 years ago, and nobody addressed it. It's Jared Goff's fault. And then they get a guy that they like, and I will throw a name in here, okay? a good example of a quarterback that they like, Josh Rosen. Did you know that Josh Rosen has already won 19 Super Bowls and he hasn't even played a game yet? The Arizona Cardinals are the New York Yankees of the 1920s. They've won 5 straight Super Bowls. They haven't even played a game yet. And it's like, I've watched Josh Rosen play. I'm sorry. The guy's ceiling has been reached. What you saw on Saturday is what you are going to get on Sunday. That's it. He's peaked. Not saying he's going to be a bust. Maybe a Jim Everett. I don't even go Jim Everett type. Maybe he's going to be a Rodney Peete or a Warren Moon. Warren Moon was a great quarterback. Would you want Warren Moon at the end of the game to win you a championship?
Only if it were in Canada.
Only if it were in Canada, right? Exactly. So, I'm sorry, Rosen's okay, and we'll see what his career turns into. But forgive me for not giving him a yellow jacket already and giving the Cardinals 5 straight Super Bowls against whomever the NFL chooses to pick. I'm done with it. You know, the Jets are supposedly, you know, all of a sudden this great team. It's like, guys, they know there's so many more problems around those organizations. It's not just that. So I'm so fed up with the, oh, I never said that, or, oh, you know, then they just don't even talk about it. Like, there's no apologies made to these athletes when they're wrong, you know, and their explanation for why they picked the way they picked doesn't even make sense, because you're sitting there going, you made the decision off of 7 games, or you made the decision off of 1 year, a travel year. Let's look at Todd Gurley 2 years ago. Okay, Todd Gurley gets drafted by the St. Louis Rams. They move from St. Louis to LA, right? Coincidence that the Chargers struggled in the beginning of their season last year too, right? No, it's a travel year. They were able to pick it up because they didn't travel that far. The Rams traveled halfway across the country. Coupled with the fact they had no offensive line, they had no O coordinator, they had no plan on how to use them, their system was stale, and a lot of people said it was 1980s football. Don't insult 1980s football. Don't insult 1980 football. That was 1880s football that the Rams were trying to play. They didn't even know the forward pass was invented yet, apparently. So yeah, he's going to struggle. Then you bring in a new system, a new coach, a new idea, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, we didn't see this coming. Really? You didn't know that he was that talented from 2 years ago and in college? Because 1 year makes your career. Well, if that's the case, then why didn't Tom Brady suck when he blew his knee out after week 1? He didn't play a single down. And the one game that he did play in, he really wasn't doing that well against the Chiefs. I guess he sucks. Right? I'm done.